Hello, welcome back. Today we're going to teach you how to assemble a short block. So stick around. If you want to rebuild your Pushrod V8 but don't know where to start, this will give you a good, decent overview of what is involved. Please don't consider this a definitive guide. We are starting with a cleaned, honed, small block Chevrolet V8 with 350 cubic inches of displacement. If you want to see more details about prepping the block, check out the playlist in the description for more information. Fat man, fat man, fat man. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put the freeze plugs back in the block. So we're using brass ones because they will never rust. And to make sure they never leak, we're going to use some of this here. It is a non-hardening, slow-drying sealant. There's really no science to it. You don't want to go too deep because you'll just knock it all the way in there. You just want to go a little bit past flush. The freeze plugs are all installed now. As you can see, they're just barely inset, just past flush, which is exactly where you want them to be. And just a tiny bit of that sealant on there. It'll help make sure they never leak. Next thing we're gonna do, actually, we're not quite done with the freeze plugs. We're as done as we're gonna get right now. There's 3 more at the back of the block here that we can't get while it's on the engine stand. So once everything else is done and we have it hanging from a cherry picker, we'll install those. It shouldn't be too crazy. We actually can't install this one here until we have all of the cam bearings in. But we're about to do that right now. Next step, we're gonna put the cam bearings in. Now they'll come packaged in a box where they are actually directional. They have different sizes, very minorly, based on the different spots they go. So it's very important to pay attention and put them in the right spot, because otherwise you'll have a bad day. Probably gonna vary based on who makes your cam bearings and how they package them. For this particular set of cam bearings, which is like some cheap Summit Racing cam bearings, this one here belongs to the back of the block, and this one here belongs at the front of the block, and they belong in that order. Try very hard not to get them mixed up. If they do get mixed up, you're kind of hosed. Don't mix them up. And we're going to start at the back of the block. We're going to get our handy-dandy cam bearing tool installer. I'm certain there's places you can rent these from. I do enough of this. I own one. So you don't necessarily need to buy one. You can probably borrow one or rent one if you know the right people. So here we go. We're going to start with the very first cam bearing. A handful of important items to note. First of all, your cam bearings will either have a groove or they'll have a hole in them. And depending on who you ask, this hole belongs in a different place. The way I always do it, I always make sure this is not aligned with the oil fill galley from the block. Let me show you what I mean by that. If you look, the front one's easiest to see here. Right here, there is an oil passage right there in the bottom of the oil or the cam bearing journal. There's also another one, I think, on the top there. Yeah, there is. So one on the top and one on the bottom. Now, that's pretty much the same for all of these. You can look straight down the cam and you can see they come right down. So I normally try not to align them with that. If you align them with that, then you won't necessarily have the best oil pressure. You're going to be putting a lot of oil pressure straight past that bearing, straight to the cam. What you really want it to do is you want it to fill up that groove, this groove in here, with oil pressure. And then it'll bleed all the way around the camshaft, and that way you'll have better oil pressure. I've never done it another way, so I don't know if it messes anything up. I've always been told that that's the way to do it. So that's the way I do it. You feel free to do whatever your little heart desires. I won't tell you you're doing it the wrong way. I've been told it matters. I've never messed it up, so who knows. All right, I'm gonna show you what I'm talking about with the oil holes. So we've got one here, and we've got one right there. And we're gonna set it right here, and you can see there's an oil passage on the top there. You can see this bubble here. If you look on the bottom, there's one right there in the middle of the bottom. So this is not lining up with either one of those, and that's exactly where we're going to set it. Oh, the other thing, I'll show you on the front one, because I have a really small cam bearing that can slide really just like in and out. So we have our cam bearing and we're gonna knock it in there. It's not gonna go in this easily when we put it in the right spot. You want it to be centered. You don't want it to be sticking too far out one way or the other. And that is very important because otherwise it won't ride properly on the camshaft and you're gonna have lots of problems. So that one, I know for sure is the right way to do it. There's no question about that. So get it centered in the journal properly. Because that's so important, it's pretty important to do a very, very small like tap at a time. So when you're actually driving it in, drive it lightly. I don't know if you can hear anything because the wind is really loud. So we're just gonna install them. First, we're gonna insert the tool. Then we're gonna put the bearing in. We're gonna use a screwdriver to hold it still or tighten the tool down, and then start tapping it in. Then we're gonna check it, and tap it some more, check it some more, tap it some more, check it some more, and we're on to the next bearing. We're gonna do the same exact thing for the rest of them. All right, we're all done. Those are all set. Our next step, we're gonna put the main bearings on. Now the main caps are different. Well, most of them are the same, one of them is different. So this one right here is at the very, very back of the block, goes right here. And it is different from the rest of them in that it's larger. Also, it's where the thrust washer goes. The thrust washer is integrated to this rear bearing. Oh, the damn mud dauber is gonna fucking ruin my engine. The thrust washer is what keeps the crankshaft from moving forward and backwards. So it's very important that you get that right. But we're not really gonna adjust anything, we're just gonna install it. So here we go. So just like the oil passages were important on the camshaft bearings, they're also important on the rod bearings, but it's a different setup. So for these, you actually want the holes to line up. So one half of the bearing is gonna have a hole, the other half is not gonna have a hole. So the half that has a hole needs to go on the block side on my particular application. Could be different on yours, but small block Chevy is all the same. Just, I don't know if you're working on a Ford or Mopar, I don't know. Anyway, this is our rear main cap here. It's got a hole right here. We have an oil port right there. So we're gonna line those two up. That way we make sure we get good oil in. Now you wanna be very careful and not touch these with dirty hands. I have very dirty hands. I'm touching them. Do as I say, not as I do. If you're gonna tap on these, use like a wooden handle of some other tool or a rubber mallet. Tap them into place. Don't wanna ding them up. You don't wanna, score the edges and fuck everything up. So, done to do that. We're gonna take the corresponding cap for the other side, and we're gonna put it on the on the actual cap itself. There we go. We have a main cap with a bearing, and we have a block with a bearing. I'm gonna put the rest of the bearings in the block, set the crank on there, and then probably go try to find our other main cap bolts. I'm not sure where they are, but I'll see if I can find them. Once upon a time, this bottle contained assembly lube. You should use assembly lube. I'm using motor oil. You should use assembly lube. There. Now we're going to set the crank in. It is not fully seated, but that's okay. We'll drop it in here in a second. I'm gonna go find my main cap bolts, and I'll be back. They've got little marks on them that show which way they go, and that arrow points towards the front of the block. This one you can't install backwards. The rest of them do that, and you're good. After I snug each one, I like to make sure I can still turn it over freely by hand. That just makes sure there's nothing wrong. We don't have any kind of way too tight clearances, and it helps you eliminate any other issues. If you just torque them all down and then I can't turn it, but you didn't check each one, you don't know which cap has the problem. Brief cat pet intermission. Hi. How are you doing, big fat man? Are you a good big fat man? Yeah, big fat guy. Big chunky monkey guy. Yeah. Hello. Aww, Chloe just love. Aww. You're a good cat.
Say hi!
Okay. Check your spec, alright? Our main caps are going to be torqued to 70 pound-feet. And we have our torque wrench in our socket, and we're going to do that. We're still going to rotate it between each click, just to make sure we're not fucking anything up. And that's it. Check your spec and do it right. There you go. Good reminder to reset your torque wrench back to 0 when you're done with it. It'll help make your torque wrench actually accurate if you use it again in a year. All right, our next step, we have put our top groove piston ring in each of our cylinder bores here. We're going to use a piston to push it down in the bore so it's nice and square. And then we're going to use a feeler gauge, and we're going to check for the ring gap. We just want to check and make sure if it's too small, the ring can actually expand in the ring groove of the piston, and it can crack the ring land and score the cylinder wall and just generally do a lot of bad things. I'll stick our piston in there, and I'll go down to the bottom or the very top of the third ring land, and I'll make sure it's even all the way around. That's how I know it's square. There we go, they're all set. We're gonna pull out our feeler gauge, make sure it's clean, and then we're gonna check them. It's a process. Stick it in there, make sure it's square. Get your feeler gauge, feel where you're at. If you can't fit it, pull it out, file it a little bit, and then go from there. So we've got our 0.15 here, and then our 0.18. 0.15 is for the top ring, and then 0.18 is gonna be for the bottom ring. You're gonna look at your ring, and you're gonna find your gap. On ours, our little gap is right there. And then we're gonna stick that in there and see how it does. It fits pretty well. Has basically no drag. So we're good on that cylinder. And then we're just gonna check them all the exact same way. Just gonna show you up close. There's a mark on this. It says up. Sometimes they'll say top, sometimes they'll say up. Either way, it's important to get the orientation right. So make sure that's right. So now comes the very, very fun part where we have to file the rings. It's not very, very fun. It's very time consuming. Very similar to the cam bearings, you gotta file and check and file and check and file and check. So this is the one we just filed, and we are good. Everything's happy there. No problem. And this is one we haven't filed yet, and we can't quite fit it in there. We're gonna have to file them all a little bit. This is gonna take a while, so I'm gonna set you up with some time lapse. We got really, really lucky with the top set of rings that they all fit perfectly. The bottom, we had to file literally every single ring. got ourselves our properly gapped rings. We can go in that one, and we can go in that one, and we can go in that one, and we can go in that, and all of them. They're all fine. They're all good. Now it's important, you have to gap these in each cylinder that they're going to be in, because the cylinders are just slightly different sizes. So make sure you keep track, because you're supposed to gap the first ring too. All of my first rings were fine. But the first ring for this hole has to go in the piston for that hole. And the second ring for this hole has to go in the piston for that hole. So keep track of where your pistons are, where your rings are while you're gapping them. And you shouldn't mess it up. There you go. Now we're going to stick all the rings on the pistons, and then we're going to do the third ring, which doesn't need to be gapped at all. I'll show you how to do that. The third ring is actually the easiest one to do. It's got 3 different rings that go in it. You've got this little wavy ring here, and then you've got the 2 other spring looking rings. So this is your oil control ring. There's no gapping, there's no measuring, there's nothing really. You jam. I put the wavy one in first. You do have to be very careful. Make sure when you install it, it doesn't overlap like that, because that'll mess shit up. So make sure it's sitting open like that. Put the wavy one in first, and then I put both of those in, one on the bottom, one on the top. There you go. We're all set. All right, next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna install the cam. We got ourselves a camshaft. Installation's pretty straightforward on this. The biggest tip I have is just go really, really slowly. So all these lobes here sticking out at different angles, you don't really want to catch one of the cam bearings that we installed with the edge of this. You can scratch it pretty badly. So as long as you go super, super mega slowly, you'll be fine. Our camshaft came with a big tube of sauce. So we're gonna slam this thing full of sauce and then install it. We're gonna sauce it up and then throw it in. It's pretty important not to drop your camshaft. There you go. It's just that easy. Alright, we're going to give you a quick rundown on how to install a piston and rod, and then we'll time lapse the rest of it. So we're going to set it up so that our deck is sitting perpendicular to the wall, parallel to the ground. And then we're going to set our rod journal here on the crank as low as possible. And then we're going to get our piston, which we kept track of which one's which, very important. And we're going to pull our connecting rod cap off of here. We're going to take our 2 rod bearing halves, and we're going to install one on the cap, same as the main bearings. Little tab, set the little tab in there, and then pop the other side in. Make sure there's no crap up under the where the bearing goes. And there's that installed. Now when we put it in the block, we're going to install the cap so that the little locks, the little lock tabs here and here are on the same face. Then we're going to take our assembly lube and we're going to throw some down the hole onto the crank journal, and we're going to put some right here on the rod bearing as well. These are actually directional. It matters which way is forwards. Make sure it's pointed the right way. Make sure your shit's right. Alright, my shit's right. Okay. Yeah, you did. Okay. You need to make sure that you get all of the rings under the compressor, otherwise you're going to have a bad day. Crank it down as tight as it'll go. A wooden handle or a rubber mallet or something, and you're just going to tap it down into the board. There you go. That's all she wrote. Then you're going to go from underneath and you you want to make sure when you're doing this that you don't hit this on the actual crank. You can kind of fuck it up pretty badly if you do that. Take our rod bearing cap here, and we're gonna oil it up real nice, and then we're gonna throw it on there. Tap it on there gently. Throw our nuts on there, and then we're gonna torque them. So we're gonna do 40 foot-pounds. Alright, and then the next thing we're gonna do, we'll do this after every one, just like we did the main bearings. Make sure everything turns over still. And it'd be a good time to put a little oil down in the cylinder. It'll smoke a bit when we fire it up for the first time, but it'll be better. Alright, we're going to do the rest on time lapse, and we'll be back with you when all the pistons are in. All right, we're done. The short block is assembled. We need some bolts for our cam sprocket. We just have one that happens to fit just so we can get it timed properly. But everything's timed. All of our pistons are in. Turns over just fine. Everything seems happy there. Still need a lot left until we're done, ready to put it in the car. But we have very good progress here. There you go. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something. If you have questions, post a comment. If you like the longer video, let me know. I'm probably going to do more for a while. Just see how they do. We will see you next time.